Yo, what it do, guys, and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we're going to be taking a closer look at Mirage, and we're going to be using an augment for this build. It's going to be centered around her fourth, kind of like a disco ball build. Lots of killing, lots of very effortless killing as well. So if you don't really typically want to aim, but you want things whenever you just kind of run and everything around you running dies, this is basically going to be the build for you. All right, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump straight into things, and we're going to start off with the Mirage build right off of the rip. So to start things off, well, as always, is normally what we're going to be focusing on the left hand side will be the ability stats. But just before I get to the ability stats, let's go ahead and cover the augment, because this will really dictate how we change these ability stats. So the augment is going to be Prism Guards. It basically just now means whenever you go and use Prism, which is this ability right here, normally Mirage throws it out, and it's a ball of like a disco ball of lasers that essentially drains your energy the longer that it remains active. Well, what actually happens with this augment is it's now going to follow Mirage instead, so it's no longer going to drain. Instead, it's going to be a duration, but it's quite a low duration. As you can imagine, 4 seconds is extremely low. It's because it gets quite powerful. The idea is that so long as the prism remains active and the more enemies that it hits, the more subsequential I'm gonna keep this in, but the more overall build up damage that it gets, subsequent damage that it builds up and gets. So that's basically what's going on here. You want to go and keep it alive as long as possible, so your damage will naturally build up depending on how your duration is. So with that in mind, we want to go and look at the ability stats. Now, as I've just spoken about it, 4 seconds is quite low, and typically by it remaining active for longer, we actually go and build up more damage over time with it being active. But we have to keep rebuilding that every single time that we go and cast it, which is a little annoying, but it's still going to be good because that's where the second thing comes in. So start things off with duration. Try and get as much duration as you can on your build. Not only is duration just going to be good for the timer of Prism, but it's going to be good for all of the other abilities that we have inside her kit and her kit in general. Everything's just going to basically scale off duration anyways. Quality of life timers. Up next then is going to be the secondary stat, which is going to be the strength. And like I said, the idea is that Prism is going to end up doing a lot of damage. So it says damage here 250, but it's actually going to be 572. But it's 572, and the more, I'll put some text on the screen here, the more that the lasers essentially keep hitting enemies, the more overall subsequent damage we go ahead and build up, is the word I was trying to use earlier. So that's basically what's going to be going on here. So we want to go and keep this laser alive as long as possible, try and make it hit as many enemies as possible, build up even more damage, and during that lifespan of that prism being active, you will just start mowing down enemies absolutely effortlessly. You know, everything around you is going to be dying, which is just fantastic. So again, a little bit of strength here to go ahead and just build up that base starting point is always going to be a good thing. So I would probably go and bring some strength in here. Now, the other thing that's also going to be good is going to be range. Now, in some cases, some people are going to want way more range than what I've got on this build. So if you want to go and bring more range in, let's say that you don't want Prism Intensify, Precision Intensify, but you wanted to go and bring things like things like stretch instead. If you want to go and bump the range up a bit more so that this can reach further, that's also fine. Again, a lot of the damage of this is going to be scaling just by the laser being alive anyways. So if you want to go for more quality of life and bring some more range into your build, you can go for it. What I tend to find is I typically only really like to run this build when I know that the tile set's a little bit smaller, because you see, although the lasers are spreading out, as you could imagine, if there's like lots of lasers that start here, they're going to be quite close. So if I put the ball on top of an enemy's head, how many lasers do you think is going to hit that enemy? The point is quite a lot, because they're closer to the I was gonna say like epicenter, but they're closer to the ball, to the prism object. Therefore, more lasers are going to be more accurate to hit them. But enemies that are wider and way further away, as you could imagine, at a certain thresholds, just due to distance, some lasers could end up even just slightly, ever so slightly missing and skeeving past an enemy. Therefore, you're not getting any build up or any damage. So therefore, as much as I like the idea of bringing range in, I just wouldn't go crazy with it. You can do, You can do. I don't. All right, I tend to go and keep this in like tighter tile sets. Things like Kuva Fortress survivals, Lua Conjunction survivals, Whispers in the Wall tile sets, the Albrecht Laboratory, so forth. Inside like 1999 tile sets, maybe like Tech Rot, where I'm going down and I'm killing like lots of the Tech Rot enemies because it's quite like cave-like features. So that's where it also works well. Anyways, enough about that. Then we've obviously got efficiency as well. And efficiency, as always, is going to be subjective to each user. Please go ahead and solve your efficiency as you need to. Now, it's going to be quite a durational build, which means a lot of things are on timers, which means I don't need to go super high with my efficiency. So this is why I go and take the biggest strength mod that's available to me, Blind Rage, with the 99% ability strength, but it hurts my efficiency. Then I take the Equilibrium, so that whenever I go and kill an enemy, if it drops a health orb, I can still get energy from them dropping a health orb, which is great on the Xmas units, which tend to drop health orbs basically whenever you go and kill them, and then vice versa as well. If they drop a energy orb, I can get a little bit of health from it. So that's also just kind of nice. So these synergize pretty well. And then the flow, and then like I said, I don't have to spam a lot in this build. The only thing that I'm typically spamming once every either if you look down here, Prism Guard, 12 seconds, but mine can be a little bit higher because I use Grimoire, but every 12 to about, I don't know, 15 seconds I need to recast my Prism. That's like the only thing I'm spamming per se. But if you go and look at the drain, it's 77 drain, which is actually pretty good, so I'm okay with that. Like, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, that's also just gonna be really good. All right. Now, as for the rest of the build and how it's going to be working is I've got the Prime Continuity, again, duration. I got the Narrow-Minded duration. The rest of my duration, if you're wondering where it's coming from, is my Archon Shards. I'll get to that a little bit later. Now, obviously, ability strength. This is mostly for the Prism in here. I don't really need it for the other abilities, so I just figured I'd go and bump up Prism damage. Again, not really needed. If you want to put Stretch over this, you can do. If you want to even put Transient Fortitude in here, you could consider that, but keep in mind that is going to hurt your duration a little bit, so it's not something that I would typically applaud, but you can do it, all right, if you're just looking for a little bit more base build up damage. And then finally, just overextended. That's basically where I'm getting like majority of my range from, just as a standalone range mods. That's why I go and chuck in there. Now, as for the top two mods that I go ahead and use here, both quality of life, both utility. One is going to basically be for shield gating. This basically means whenever an enemy goes ahead and takes my shields off of me, what I go and do is I can either recast my Subsume ability, which I'll get to in a moment, or I can basically just tap and recast my Eclipse ability. And then as I go ahead, and since this ability is recastable, so I can just press it whenever I want to, because my efficiency is so low, it basically means that this costs more, so it costs 38.75, and 150% of that 38.75 is they're going to go into my shields. So it's a good way to go and help me with shield gain and keep my survival up. They go and drop my shields, I just go ahead and tap free. I wouldn't say you are going to be the tankiest or the most amazing survival in this build, but essentially it's a very high KPM, very high damage build. So most of your survival is going to come from enemies just being dead, you know, and if you can play to your advantage by keeping in like smaller tile sets and corridors and whatever those kind of areas, then that's just going to work pretty well to your advantage. But yeah, this is near enough like going to be one of my survival routes outside of my Hall of Mirrors, which I'm basically only using as a way to get ahead and get higher threat priority, to make enemies kind of shoot the targets or the clones more than what they're shooting me. You just basically get like a threat priority whenever Hall of Mirrors is active. So between those two things, that's kind of my only survival, unless I want to go and use this for survival and damage reduction, but I don't. The Prism scales off damage on this, which we'll get to in a moment. So then finally, this Prime Shield footage. This is because I'm going to be really aggressive. As you'll go and see throughout my gameplay, I'm basically like walking enemies down. I'm going straight towards them and I'm not stopping. It's like full W key. Just hold the W key, full movement towards them. Everything around me is going to go ahead and die. So ideally, I don't want to be knocked back or interrupted or anything. And especially on a frame where I don't have a lot of defenses, the last thing I want to go and do is get knocked down on the ground and make myself more vulnerable to enemies dogpiling on top of me because I can't move. So this is going to be generally quite important for an aggressive playstyle. From there, what we've got over here is going to be the Arcanes. Now, as for the Arcanes, as always, you can kind of flex them however you want to, but I do really like these. Ideally, I think the Arcane Energize synergizes quite nicely with this. It's not a heavy spam build, but just on the off chance that you get unlucky with the Health Orbs or the Sim Deconstruct or wherever else it may be, if that does not go in your favor, then it's still nice to go and have an Arcane Energize backup. It picks up 150 energy to yourself and allies within 15 meters, but then it enters 15-second cooldown. This doesn't maketh the build, nor does it not be needed in the build. It's kind of like in the middle of both of those. I've played it with it, I've played it without it. I prefer it just ever slightly with it because I still wouldn't mind having excess energy so that I can do a full cycle of abilities whenever I please, rather than being like, uh-oh, I kind of have to build up a little bit more energy. Yeah, so forth. So again, not 100% necessity, but also just very nice quality of life. And then down here, Molt Augmented. Whenever I go and get a kill, I go and gain ability strength. Stacks up to 250 times, so it's 60% ability strength. And the ability strength works pretty well on this one. Now, I won't lie to you, and provided you're not being hit quite often, the Molt Efficiency might actually and just generally be a little bit better, because you see, Molt Efficiency is going to end up giving you 36% ability duration for every second that your shields go ahead and remain active. But I can't guarantee that my shields will always go ahead and remain active, even with the brief respite and enemies dying. So therefore, I think I would rather just go and lean on Molt Augmented, because again, basically all my abilities can go ahead and scale off of it. But the more important one is going to be basically Prism and my Subsumable. Otherwise, you can go Molt Efficiency, because again, this so long as your Prism remains active, you will end up, as long as the lasers are hitting enemies as well, you will end up just building up accumulated subsequent damage. That's just basically what's going to happen, all right? So that's basically what I'm doing with the build. There's a little bit of flexibility you can go and see. If you want more range, take more range. If you want more strength, take more strength. But again, duration is going to be your main factor. Just make sure you bump duration up as much as you possibly can, and that's where you're going to start. So from there onwards, what I've done with the abilities and just the overall rotation of the build, let's go and just talk about this really quickly. The passive isn't something that I typically need on the builds. Ideally, it's just slide and lasts 85% longer, and aerobatic maneuvers are 50% faster. I'm not going to lie to you, it's not really needed on the build in the slightest, and Mirage is one of those warframes that could actually benefit from a healthy new passive. You know, a lot of warframes are getting new passives these days. A lot of the outdated ones are kind of being updated. Mirage is one of them. You know, I'm sure some of you guys are going to argue against me right now and say, oh, I really like this. That's fine, you can keep it, but she could use something else, some kind of quality of life, some kind of damage scaling, some kind of survival scaling, whatever else it may be. Just having purely just this on its own, in my opinion, is not enough. It's just my opinion, okay? So don't worry about it. It's not too important for the build, is what I'm trying to go and say. Horde of Mirrors, again, not actually really too important for the build. The reason why I'm basically using this is to go and utilize the threat priority that it has. By having these other clones, it does go ahead and make enemies go ahead and target them at particular times. So it helps my survival a little bit. Unfortunately, the more that I looked into it and whatnot, it doesn't really typically help the Prism. So you will go and see that they go ahead and imitate the cast. Whenever you go and cast Prism, the clones also look like they're casting Prism, but you're not getting extra Prisms because of Horde of Mirrors. And since I'm not really typically shooting, you can go and bring secondary weapons in here, like an Epitaph, like a primer, and it works really well, but I'm not prioritizing that. So just keep that in mind. Ideally, it's more like I'm just going to keep this act that's going to help my survival, a very low form of survival. But again, I might as well go and take it anyways. It's also nice, just high duration, and it synergizes with the kit. So this is my subsumable of choice. I had a little look at all of the different subsumables that can go with Prism, and ideally when it comes towards the overall damage, the goal is I want things to die, right? So when I go use the fourth ability, I want things around me to perish and fall over. So the more that we had a little look at all of the abilities that are available, the more that I really basically wanted something that scaled off duration, because again, we're going to go high duration for Prism anyways. So the less that I have to recast an ability, the better. A Phantomize does not have to be recast that often. What's also nice about Phantomize is that it's quite directional, which means in pull waves, choke points, so forth, whatever, if I'm running towards the enemy, a Phantomize naturally is essentially removing their defenses. Now, if I go and remove an enemy's armor slowly, and if I remove their shield slowly, my prism's doing more damage. But remember, whilst my prism is active and hitting enemies, it's also building up damage anyways. So not only is prism building up damage, but a Phantomize is lowering their resistance. So imagine like a seesaw of just like, their resistances go down, our damage goes up, but our damage goes up even further because the resistances have gone down. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1. This can remove shields, it can go remove armor. It does heat damage when it's hitting enemies, which is also a nice way to go and build up damage as well. But then when the armor is removed and when the shields are removed, it then does heat proc. So then the status is only when their defenses have been removed. Okay, so that can also be generally quite nice. The other subsumables that I did go and look at was things like Rhino's Roar. Now Rhino's Roar actually acts like I'll put some of this stuff on the screen here. Rhino's Roar actually acts as a faction mod kind of to Prism, so you get multiplicative damage. And Eclipse, which is going to be this one here, adds 100% damage to Prism on the lasers as well. So the idea is one of them's adding 100% damage, one of them's multiplying damage. As we always know, and if you ever watched any of my videos, the idea is that multiplying damage is always going to yield you a better result. The problem is, and what I tend to go ahead and find as I was running it through Simulacrum, in terms of KPM, which is kills per minute, how quick can you kill things within a said minute, I did 20 enemies, and I'm not gonna lie to you, this absolutely trounced me going raw, because if I do go raw, I have to replace Eclipse. You can't put raw on her second or her first or whatever. So raw has to go over Eclipse, and although it's multiplicative, which is great, unfortunately, it's not great because I still have to deal with their damage reduction, things like armor and so forth. So unless you want to outsource that to companions or focus schools like Una Rouge or whatever, you can do, but again, Phantomize, as you can imagine, it's supposed to be an effortless build. All I want to do is just put on some timers, walk towards enemies, and just watch them die, right? So this is where a Phantomize comes in. I don't have to recast as often as like a pillage per se. So this is what I would go ahead and recommend. If you want to go and chuck in something different, it's entirely up to you, but this worked really, really well with what we were doing, and I want you to understand why I took it. Eclipse, as I mentioned here, what's going to basically happen is that Eclipse, when toggled and when activated, is going to increase Prism's damage. So Eclipse is also going to be really good. And again, as you could imagine, we just basically want that damage increase, scaling off how long we can keep this active. Again, ability duration. So this is a timer, which is going to be a little bit of survival. This is a timer, which is going to be removing enemy defenses, plus a little bit of damage. This is going to be a timer, which actually buffs the prism. And this is going to be a timer. So you see how like duration is very, very important, and how it can all kind of synergize and come together. Plus the entire kit just, well, synergizes. So anyways, so then there's Prism, but like I said, you don't really need me to explain Prism. I've already explained it. I can go and show you what it looks like just with a quick group in front of me. I do have my companion in here as well, which we'll get to in a moment, so you can see how all of it comes together. But I'll show you what I go ahead and do in terms of rotation. I go ahead and just shoot this out. I'll show you in a second. I do this, this, and then I just jump into them. And this is what the damage is going to look like. Again, keep in mind, I've not built anything up just yet, so it's going to take a little bit of time. You can see how it goes a lot quicker, so you can see the damage that they're doing there. 240k. That was like a 240k laser tick. Whereas if I go and do it right at the very beginning, if you watch the tick at the beginning, and look at the damage, 8.6. And you see how it builds up like 57, 84, 102. So the more that my lasers are hitting enemies, the more that it is building up. And if I just go ahead and look at them with my Phantomize, I'm also going to be removing their defenses. And if I'm removing their defenses, I'm removing things like damage reduction to their health. Therefore, I'm also doing more damage. So you can see how all of it kind of comes together. Now, I was also using my other things here, so let's go ahead and go over those really quickly. So I was using the Grimoire. The reason why I'm using the Grimoire is because I'm going to use something called Risk Invocation. This basically means I middle click, so I use the alternate fire with the Grimoire, and what it does is that so long as it hits multiple enemies, stacks up to 15 times, I can get 60% ability duration from this. And remember how I said, like, again, all my entire kit scaling of ability duration, but also the longer the present remains active, the more subsequent damage it's also building up. So this goes pretty well with it. Now, I will also go and give you another thing that I also have tried is if you don't want to go ahead and do this, which is more like automative, you do it once, you run, and whilst it's active, you can kind of just be automative. But if you actually want to increase your DPS a lot faster, then taking a primer, something like Epitaph, and then running some viral on it, actually it significantly increases your damage threshold, your KPM, way quicker because I've also got viral building up even faster. Right now it's just my companion doing it, but my companion doesn't have as much quality of life luxury spread, AoE spread, and a primer than what I do when I manually control it. You'll see what I mean when I go and show you my companion in a moment, even with like a Tazakor, even if you use the Panzer, it doesn't matter. Even if you use a Hound with Prospectus, you're still going to end up just getting more often when you prime. Manual is always going to be you tend to be rewarded more for manual than you do automatic, because that would make more sense, right? Be rewarded for activity. So primer also works really well. So if you're looking to increase your KPM, but then you've just got to keep clicking every so often, whereas the Grimoire I don't have to click as often. So you can choose either one that you want to, but I just wanted to go ahead and make sure that I explained the difference between both of those. I'm using the Praedos over here. I'm not using it for any particular reason, but whenever I'm not using the melee, because I'm focused on the ability rotation more than like using anything from the melee slot or the primary slot or whatever, I tend to then just use like stat sticks per se. So basically Praedos is something that you'll see in a lot of my videos. Why? Because parkour velocity basically just means every time I bullet jump or roll, I'm getting a bit more distance, 30% extra on the parkour velocity. It just allows me to move a bit quicker through the tile sets. As you can imagine with a prism, whilst I'm on a timer, I really want to try and min-max how far I can move and close the gap on enemies because I'm on a 12-second timer with prism. So ideally parkour velocity works pretty well with the builds. From there, focus schools. Essentially, I'm only just using Madurai. The main reason why I'm using Madurai focus school is because of sling strength. If I could get things like ability range or ability duration from focus schools, I probably would have leaned a bit more in towards those. But since I can't, then basically what I'm looking for is essentially going to be ability strength. This is where Madurai comes in because this gives me the highest return out of all of the nodes and all of the things I can go and take, 40% after I go ahead and sling towards the ground. Perfect. All right, besides from that, I can also get a little bit of casting speed, and casting speed on prism is relatively lengthy, so casting speed can also be nice to go ahead and speed it on up. So I switch over to my operator, I dash into the ground a couple of times, and then as I switch back towards my warframe, not only do I go and get 40% ability strength, but I also go and get 50% casting speed as well. That lasts for 20 seconds, that lasts for 20 seconds, they synergize together, and it's just free. All right, you know, and if I'm taking on Frax warriors in you know, Zaramun, or if I'm taking on Frax warriors in Devir, oh no, Devir I don't think you get to do it, but if I'm taking on Frax warriors inside Lua Conjunction Survival, stuff like areas like that, Void Strike can be really good for me to go ahead and just pop them down pretty quickly when they're there in their ethereal state. So they got like a physical form, you kill their physical form, they're in an ethereal form, and then you basically have to use Void to go ahead and kill them. So this can also be good to go ahead and just chunk them down. Now, so the companion that I'm basically running, I'm going to be using the Die Rigger. This is a companion that I use an awful lot, but I've actually changed it just ever so slightly. So normally the main concept of the main things that you want is attack coil. It basically means the Sentinel will snap up to 7 enemies within 10 meters. As you can imagine with the Prism build, I'm going to be like quite on top of enemies. I'm going to be like running them down with a Phantomize, stripping their armor, the Prism ball being as close as I can to them so I can hit them with more lasers. And since I'm going to be on top of them, then why not have this guy go ahead and zap them? But not only does he go and zap them within 10 meters, if you use Manifold, it basically just means that companion preset mods apply status effects for companion weapons. So this is a companion preset mod, so whatever elements I have on this, it will go ahead and carry over. That's going to be the goal of it. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is, so long as I've got viral in here, I'm looking pretty good. This is a quicker way for me to go ahead and hit them with one viral stack. One viral stack increases my damage by damage amplification by 100%, but ideally I would like more than just 100%, and I can get up to 325% if I go for 10 stacks of viral. But as you can imagine, when it comes towards this doesn't do an awful lot of procs that often, so it's going to take a long time for me to go ahead and get 10 stacks of viral with this. I don't actually think you can. I think viral actually wears off before you even get to 10 stacks just off Arc Coil on its own. This is where I basically go and put the assault mode on, because I'm going to go and make sure that the sentinel can attack. And then I use Tazikor, because Tazikor releases a burst of static electricity that can jump between foes. So the idea is now I'm going to use it as a primer. So I'm going to have a little bit of fire rate, a little bit of punch through that can be choked up in there, a little bit of multi-shot to help the status chance towards it, since it's a beam. Then I've got the so these aren't as important, but as long as I've got viral in here with more status chance, that's going to be good. And I'm chucking this in here as well for viral weighting, so that viral is the highest chance of procking. So as you see, it's 37.8% there. I want viral to be the highest, which then basically means when I now go and use Tazikor, or now go and use Companion, if I walk up here, you'll see that? And 10 stacks of viral, how quick it is. And then you can see how like I'm zapping every so often as well. So there's only like 1 stack of viral, 2 stacks of viral. So you can see how like all of that comes together. Now when that's doing that and I'm putting a prism on top of it, that's amplifying my damage by 325%. Get the idea? So that alone is that without a Phantomize. So you can see how it's slowly building up. But you can see like why I'm now running the Phantomize, because you can see how much quicker I can kill them. As much as I would have loved Rhino's Roar for the builds, unfortunately, like I said, the KPM is just way too... It might be better against like infested and enemies that don't have resistances, but once enemies do have resistances, you kind of want to slowly remove those, and that's why I wouldn't really consider the Roar per se. The only other thing about the Dirigger that I would go and use is the Synth Deconstruct. Enemies injured by companions have a 25% chance to go and drop a health orb. That synergizes with Equilibrium, and as you can imagine, I'm hitting lots of enemies with lots of AoE, lots of debuff and viral, so it kind of just works really, really well together. And then that's basically my companion in a nutshell. All right. So that's all of that. Let's go and talk about the Archon Shards really quickly. The Archon Shards, I would say, are going to be kind of, well, I guess I'll tell you what I have right now, but they're going to be very specific that what I would aim for. So number one, I got casting speeds. This is what I would actually argue a must-have. You see, the prism ability, as you can even see in that interface, takes a long time for prism to actually be taken out. I believe it's base 2 seconds of the cast, and if you don't jump and cast it in midair, if you just cast it when you're standing still, your animation locked, and you can see that she doesn't move when she casts the ability. So this is a bit of a problem. So ideally, and I'm going to say this as much as I possibly can, I don't know what the cap threshold is, but if you want to chuck on as many cast speeds as you want to, be my guest. All right, because ideally I just want to go ahead and get the prism out as fast as possible. I don't want to be slowed down. I don't want to be susceptible to taking incoming damage because I'm too busy casting. Feel free to run as many casting speeds as you can, but just try and make sure that you don't cap it. So again, I don't know what the cap on it is. I've got no idea. Maybe you can run 5 casting speeds. I don't know. Either way, get casting speeds, and Tau Forged Ambers are going to be great for that. From now onwards, I have some maximum energy filled on spawn. This is just my quality of life. You'll see this on a lot of my builds. It's very, very good. It's kind of like a miniature preparation. Preparation is 100%. This is 45%. This just basically means, so long as I got prime flow on my build, which is what I use on a lot of my builds, then my maximum energy, when I go and hover at energy there, I start with 473 energy whenever I go and start my mission. And what's the goal of this build? Well, the goal of the build is to kill, right? Which means I'm going to end up doing what? Like exterminate missions, whatever kind of missions, disruptions, so forth, survivals. I basically want to be able to cast these in a row straight off the rip. So 1, 2, 3, 4, off I go, mow down everything. I don't have to like, oh god, I need to build up energy. I need to go and put a large energy pad. I need to go and get the idea. I just want to go and cast my abilities right off rip, and off I go. However, this is the last one. I have got ability duration, and I won't lie to you. Not only wish I could go and put 5 casting speeds in here, I also wish I could put 5 ability durations in here. As we know, the idea is that the Prism Guard scales off duration. Self-explanatory why I've got these, right? But also, and I've reiterated this one a few times, but as we also know, so long as this remains active for each laser that's hidden, it's also building up damage. So ideally, I'm being rewarded by having very, very high duration. This is why I've got these in there. So you can see how all of this makes sense. If you didn't want to go and run this one, you don't have to. If you just want to go and use a large energy pads, then I would go and do 4 ability durations, 1 casting speed, or I'll do 2 casting speeds, 3 ability durations, whatever way works for you. I believe you could go and put some other ones. I'll just go and put them up here on the screen. You could go and put some other ones on the build if you wanted to, but for the most part, I would say that these ones work pretty dandy, and these casting speed and ability duration I think are like the must-haves for the builds. I mean, unless ability range was going to be one, then I would go for it, but no, ability duration and casting speed, lock those in. And so I believe I've covered everything, have I? So let's go and get some gameplay up on screen then, shall we? So like I mentioned earlier, the goal with the build is essentially to go ahead and make it be relatively automative, to have the ability timers nice and high so you don't have to spam cast lots of different things. But the only thing you are mostly paying attention to is your prism. Make sure that your prism is obviously active and pay attention to the duration of your prism, because depending on your overall ability duration is going to depend on how long that's remaining active, and every time you cast it, you're having to rebuild your damage again and again. So the longer that it stays active, the better. God forbid, if I could have 700% ability duration in this build, I would go for it. But I might hurt other areas, but I would go for it. So yeah, as you can see, basically I just go and get my Horde of Mirrors active, a little bit of protection towards me, just a little bit, nothing massive. I go and get my Phantom Eyes cast, and then I just keep looking with my cursor, my reticle, just look towards enemies, and then that's going to slowly armor strip them and shield strip them. Make sure your Eclipse is active so you can go ahead and get extra damage from your prism, and then just go and get your prism active. You will basically kill... I don't think there was anything that I struggled really killing, but it depends on when I'm casting it. Again, if I've only hit a couple of enemies, then I'm not going to have a really strong laser when I enter a new pack of enemies. But if I jump into a giant pack of enemies and then cast my prism, then as you can imagine, it's going to build up even more. So ideally, the more enemies in that one prism life cycle, the more damage you're going to require from it. So it actually rewards you from being stupidly aggressive with your positioning and getting towards them. Obviously, try not to kill yourself, but it's stupidly aggressive, all right, with this build. Acolytes will still go down. I think the only one that's the most annoying is going to be Violence. I believe Malice also is kind of annoying. I saw Malice twice, and whenever it did go and put the bubble on me, I could have sworn it like messed with my lasers. I wasn't entirely 100% sure, so I just rolled. As soon as Malice put a bubble on me, I rolled it off anyways, but it felt like it did, but I also couldn't tell because my timer had also was running out at the same time it cast. It was completely coincidental. But anyways, Violence is your biggest problem as an Acolyte. If you're anywhere near Violence, it's going to disable all your abilities, and if you disable all your abilities, you're going to be in a problem. So at that point, if you do need a backup weapon to go and deal with Violence, feel free to go and do so. But my advice is, when Violence spawns, just run away from a moment. Keep it like, I don't know, 15 seconds away from him, because what he's done is that he's casted Silence. Silence will then go and run out, and then if you just recast all your abilities and run back towards him, you can go and kill him. All right, the prism will go ahead and delete Violence, but otherwise, whilst his Silence are up, you just have to stay away from him. So yeah, anyways, that's mostly about that. I'm gonna go and bring you guys over here. The goal of the build, again, just effortless. I want you to go and cast all your abilities, just run towards enemies, switch your brain off, and hopefully it'll do all of the work for you. That's kind of the gimmick. No, you're not an absolute unkillable god. The scaling is pretty decent for what it's worth, but again, it's all going to kind of come down to you removing the defenses and so forth of Phantom Eyes. This is going to give it more longevity, is what I would go ahead and say. Otherwise, this on its own is going to fall off pretty quick. So I would go ahead and argue, if you don't have a Phantom Eyes, maybe consider using things like Pillage, Hildren's Pillage, but you're going to have to spam it quite often with high duration, so it's all kind of cool. But yeah, run and gun per se, with Prism being your gun. All right, but you're not unkillable, you're not untouchable, but it's still kind of a fun build, something different to go ahead and take with Mirage outside of just like lots of shooting and whatnot. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. All right, and if you did enjoy it, and if you enjoyed today's video, please go and leave a like. If you think there's anybody out there who would go and enjoy a build like this, or you want to go and make some tweaks or anything else like that, feel free to go and share the video with a friend. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. But as always, I'll see you guys again inside the next video. Take it easy, guys. Bye, everyone.